this is Mikael Behrens, and we're here at Hill Country Conservancy's Nalle Bunny Run for another virtual tour. It's Saturday, September 19th, 2020, and we in Central Texas have finally gotten some cooler weather, slightly cooler. It's in the upper 60s this morning, but it makes a world of difference to the weather we've been used to lately. And in mid-late September, where we are now, fall bird migration is in full swing. Although fall bird migration is not as concentrated as spring migration, so it's more spread out over time, but that means that we could see different species of birds moving through. In Central Texas, bird migration is not a real straightforward story because where we are geographically, some birds live here all year round. We're north for some birds that are just here in the summer. We're south for some birds who are just here in the winter. And some birds just pass through on their way further north and south. And that can be even within one species. Like before we started filming this introduction, a little blue-gray gnatcatcher was flying above us. And blue-gray gnatcatchers are summer residents in Central Texas, and they nest and breed on the Bunny Run. But right now, blue-gray gnatcatchers also breed all over North America. So right now, the ones we're seeing are the ones that have bred further north and are on their way passing further south. So I'm excited to see what southbound birds we might find, and maybe even a few newly returning winter residents like little ruby-crowned kinglets or orange-crowned warblers. So we're going to make our usual circuit of the preserve and see what we can find. As we turned onto this side path, I noticed this yellow flower blooming, and this is a real common yellow flower that blooms here in Central Texas and on the Bunny Run in the fall, and it's called Helenium amarum. It's a scientific name. One of the common names is sneezeweed, and it's this is the first substantial patch I've seen this season, and one of the ways I recognize it, in addition to the really fine leaves, it's sort of asymmetrical. You have these gaps. Sorry, I was just hearing a bird. There's a blue jay flying over us, but I thought I heard a belted kingfisher. But anyway, that's what happens when birders talk about plants. Anyway, back to the flowers here. You can see this kind of distinctive appearance. The big head in the middle, and then the petals kind of make asymmetrically have gaps in between them. So it's nice to see this flower blooming again here. We're right here by the spring, and before we open the spring box, we noticed this beautiful American beautyberry plant with these beautiful purple berries growing at the stem. This is a really valuable and pretty common native shrub in Central Texas, and it seems to like shady areas, and it can be a popular ornamental plant as well. But this is a really nice specimen, and it's really nice to see all these bright, beautiful berries, and I'm sure the wildlife is going to appreciate them too. A lot of birds and other wildlife eat the berries. So we're on the eastern edge of the preserve, along the fence line, going downhill towards the water. And if you look on the ground here, you see all these little disturbances in the leaves, where something has dug things up. And to me, this looks like a classic sign of our local native 9-banded armadillo that's really good at sniffing for things in the ground and digging them up. They have real powerful claws, real sensitive nose. So you can see here this trail. Goes all the way down here. And that's where it seems to, oh, maybe it goes, oh yeah, look, it turns off the trail here and goes into the woods, and I see more disturbed leaves over here. So I hope that armadillo found lots of good stuff to eat. We're on the sandy prairie area in the northeast corner of the of the preserve. And one fun thing about exposed sand outside is you'll often find wildlife tracks in it. And as you can see, there's lots of interesting things going on here. A lot of little tiny trails, some sticks with the wind. I think some of these little straight lines might be caused by plants getting blown in the wind. Sometimes plants leave tracks. And probably the most interesting are these little diamond-shaped tracks in this pattern, which looks, I can't see much detail in these tracks, but these look canine to me. And a canine track of this size on a preserve where no pets are allowed is gray fox. And we've seen gray fox here many times on the preserve. I've photographed them a few times, and this isn't the first time we've found their tracks down here either. So I'm pretty sure this is a little gray fox trail going across the bare sand here. We're down by the water and the cypress trees and a few boaters that you can hear passing by. And in this shade, the lovely shade of the cypress trees, we have lots of frostweed growing. And frostweed is a neat annual plant. And you can see here last year's dead stalk of frostweed with its old flowers, and right beside it this new frostweed growing and starting to form some flowers. They form these bunches of white flowers. This will probably be blooming all through October. And frostweed is a really neat native plant that you can recognize from, likes the shade, it has these broad leaves, and it has these keels. The stem have these little ridges, soft ridges, called keels that extend out of them. And why is it called frostweed? So if we get a really hard freeze, like in December, January, after the frostweed has mostly bloomed and has lived out its life cycle, a hard freeze will cause the bases of the stems to crack, and water and sap will ooze out of it. And as it oozes out, it forms these really neat thin ribbons of ice. And so frostweed will like bloom a second time in a hard freeze, forming these really neat ice formations, which we rarely get to see here in Central Texas since we don't get many hard freezes. But if you know where a big patch of frostweed is, and through the winter, if you get a chance to go out in the morning after a hard freeze, you might be able to find it. So right next to this frostweed, we have another plant that's similar. And I think this is called late boneset. And it has the much more toothed leaves and similar but a little more airy flowers. And it also likes the shade. And I think this is more of a riparian species, this late boneset, than the frostweed is. So cool, two cool similar native species right next to each other. Eastern phoebes, oh look at them looking all around like that. Eastern phoebes are our year-round member of the flycatcher family. And you can see it bobbing its tail. That's a really good behavioral characteristic you can use to identify them. And like other members of the flycatcher family, they like to find a perch out in the open. And look at that. Below them, you can see those yellow flowers, camphorweed. There he goes. He just went out to try to catch a bug. It looks like it got something, swallowed it there. Flycatchers are fun to watch because they're relatively easy to watch. They like to pick one perch. and hunt from that perch, and they fly out on little forays and look for bugs. He took a little fly over to a nearby tree. Let's see if I can find it again. There we go, there he is. And there he goes further off. So here's a female house finch perched in the sun. You can see how streaky it is as I zoom in a little bit. And it looks like she's vocalizing too, making little calls that I can just barely hear. And house finches are year-round residents. They're actually a species, I think, that used to be more of a western species that has expanded its range eastern across the country. And the males and the females look different. The males look like this streaky female, but the males look like if you took a streaky female like this and just threw a bucket of red paint on her face and her breast. They're splashed in red. And you can real commonly find these house finches mixed with lesser goldfinches and house sparrows, and they love eating sunflower seeds on feeders or sunflower plants. And they're usually pretty gregarious, they like staying in flocks with each other. And it's a great year-round common resident bird to learn. So we're looking at a blue jay that's perched in the distance on a bare branch. These are also year-round resident birds, pretty common neighborhood birds. It's nice to get some footage. There he goes. We're at the edge of Lake Austin on the Nalle Bunny Run, looking out across the water. And the Nalle Bunny Run sits on the south bank, and on the north bank is this almost sheer cliff. And as you can see swaying in the breeze here in the video is Spanish moss growing on the other side. Spanish moss is not really a moss, it's an epiphyte plant related to the ball moss that we have. It's a lot more common, and Spanish moss is a lot more associated with water. But what's interesting is, in all the years I've been surveying the Bunny Run, I've never ever found a bit of Spanish moss on this side of the water. But you can find little patches on the other side, on the north side. And I've heard a theory about that from a botanist, that Spanish moss needs some humidity in the air, and that here where we are situated, looking north at the cliff on the north, throughout most of the year, the prevailing winds comes out of the southeasterly winds, and the wind blowing across this water and then hitting that cliff over there might raise the humidity on that side of the lake just enough to enable Spanish moss to live, where on this side of the lake the humidity is not quite high enough to let that happen. Here's the close-up of the monarch butterfly I'll have to verify it's a monarch. It could be a queen or one of those other types that I mentioned before. And I think we'll be able to determine that by the exact pattern of stripes on the back of the wings that we see here. And you see how the body has those black and white spots, those white spots on the black body. It's getting blown around a little bit as this breeze comes up. So this is Michael again, saying goodbye from another virtual tour of the Nalle Bunny Run, September 19th, 2020. It turned out to be a pretty quiet morning after my introduction with all the information about bird migration. The only southbound migrating birds we saw were a couple briefly glimpsed blue-gray gnatcatchers, which are moving through our neighborhoods a lot right now. But we did get some neat looks at an eastern phoebe, some neat year-round resident birds like an eastern phoebe, a female house finch, and a quick shot of a blue jay, a beautiful blue jay perched up in a tree. And we got to see a couple neat butterflies, which I'll have more sure identification of later on when I identify my photos. And we got to see the hanging Spanish moss on the other side of the lake that for some reason doesn't grow on this side, and just enjoyed a beautiful, peaceful, quiet, cool morning here out on the bunny run. So thanks for joining us.